Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. This is the talk. I'm Robbie Hamza. Joined today, again, alhamdulillah, by a dear friend and brother of mine, Akrim. Brother, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Akrim is the founder of the Recovery Wellness Clinic. He's a psychologist. He's a Frenchman. He has a wonderful accent. I always like to point that out, but you'll figure that out for yourselves. You're the founder of Heal the Mind.
That's right.
You're a registered mediator. You get involved in lots of, I don't know if yucky stuff is the right word, but that type of thing does get quite yucky. And I've asked brother to join me today to talk about relationships, relationship advice, to find out, get some tips and tricks for people at home. Brother, there's a lot of people who see going and getting therapy or counselling as a bit of a taboo thing, right? And these are the sort of people that I want to try and reach out to today, to people who would be afraid or to come in and sit down and have a talk and maybe give them some advice, maybe make them a little bit more comfortable with the idea of counselling and understand the benefits in it. So, look, let's talk about relationships. They're breaking down every single day. Mm-hmm. Divorce rates are through the roof. Yeah. What sort of stuff are you coming across? I mean, it's a very broad question, but like, what's breaking down relationships? Why aren't marriages surviving, brother?
Wow. First of all, thank you very much for the invite. Relationships, yeah, as you said, it's quite a wide. Yeah. You know, what's breaking our relationships? So obviously, the problem is quite deep. You know, first of all, we have to understand that according to some statistics, 1 out of 3 marriages, end up in a divorce.
Are we talking Australia? We're talking worldwide?
We're talking in Australia. I mean, if I was to give you some more recent statistics in regards to, let's say, the Middle East, in 2019, I think, if I can remember, 48% of all marriages ended up in divorce.
Wow.
In Kuwait.
In Kuwait?
In Kuwait.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's going on over there?
No.
That's about on par with America, isn't it? America's sort of 50-50, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah?
Yeah, the problem is very simple. It's just we've got to understand that we tend to take things too lightly when it comes to relationships. Mm-hmm. Obviously, when you meet someone and then when you think that the person is the right person, then you get all excited. And then we don't think about asking the right questions. We usually get caught into the superficial things, such as, what's your favorite color? Or what's your favorite movie?
Mine too. Like, wow.
That's it.
This is destiny.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we've got so much in common. He likes the same things as me.
We both like chocolate.
That's it. It's so, I wouldn't say it's so stupid, but it's naive. Yeah. And the problem is the fact that we tend to be very naive. We tend to be very superficial when it comes to relationships. Why? Because we don't want to rock the boat too much. We don't want to ask those serious questions straight away. It takes on average, 6 months to realize whether the person is the right fit for you or not. It takes longer from time to time, but roughly around the 6 months. You're not going to tell me that, in that 6 months period, you didn't have the time to discuss issues like, faith, parents, and the involvement in a relationship. How do we, raise kids once we got some? All those issues are very, very important. The thing is, what's your relationship with your parents? How do you treat them? How do they treat you? Because some of these things can actually be a deal breaker. But the problem is the fact that we're just too busy thinking about how I'm going to prepare for my wedding.
Good point. Do you think a lot of people too, especially like if you've got a young couple who've never been in a serious relationship, they've never been married, they're sort of operating under a set of, best case scenarios. Like, if a prospective husband and wife are talking and they're talking about, how should we deal with arguments? Oh, you know what? I'll listen to your point of view. You listen to mine. Sounds great, but you don't even know that you yourself are a very stubborn, arrogant person with anger management problems until you're involved in situations, and it's all well and good to say, I'm going to sit there and listen to you, but when you get heated, it turns out that you're not a guy who listens to anyone for anything. Yeah. So it's, I mean, and if you're putting yourself forward for marriage, you're trying to sell yourself, right? Like you're selling a car, you don't point out all the bad features. So you don't say, look, I'm a pretty selfish person, to be honest. Yeah. If I don't get things my way, I tend to tantrum a bit. No one's going to say that. You're like, you're selling it. I like this, I'm into that, I'm pretty understanding. No one tells you their crappy features, right?
That's it.
So you're buying this version. And I mean, our culture, the Islamic culture is that we don't have these extended engagements. So, no. I mean, in the Western world where people are in relationships for many years and before they decide to get married, we sort of jump into it straight away. And you've got a very short period of time typically to ask those questions. And as you said, what questions are we supposed to answer? Because we're not being educated by anyone as to what we should be talking about.
Yeah, definitely. The problem is the fact that we suffer actually from a lack of education when it comes to relationships. Why? Because obviously, as you said, culturally and religiously, we train and teach our kids to be, to be single. Until marriage, which is fair enough. But also, when that time comes, we panic. Oh my God, the time has come. Yeah, the time has come. What were you doing all those years? The problem is there. It's the same thing with puberty. It's another big problem. Why? Because we don't address those big, those challenges or natural challenges. We're going to face them, and we know we're going to face them, but we just somehow avoiding them. Somehow just leaving them to the last minute. And that's where we struggle. We struggle, why? Because we're not able to educate efficiently and effectively. We've got to start asking the right questions. What are your goals in life? Are they aligned with my goals? What are your beliefs? Because we know there are different madhabs. I just realized, she believes in something else. Yeah, but why didn't you do it before you have children? Before you start sharing things, before you buy the house together. We always put those things on hold. Why? Because we are scared. Why? Because we don't trust. We don't trust ourselves and others. And that's why we're scared of the reaction. Oh yeah, but he may get upset if I ask him this. Hello? Ask those questions. Doesn't matter if he gets upset. That's a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Then you've got your answer. Walk away.
You need to know what upsets this person. It's probably a good thing to know beforehand. Yeah.
And that's the thing. The problem is the fact that we just avoid. We put on hold. We're not educated, or we don't educate, and as a result, culture, other things come in the middle, and before we know, that becomes such an overwhelming thing that. We tend to just give up on the idea and just it's too hard.
Do you find that you're dealing with more problems in your relationships than necessarily, marriages that have been going on for a really long time and are just starting to fall apart, or is it sort of a bit of everything?
It's a bit of everything, I'll say. Just definitely, there is something we can avoid from the get-go. And, I'll say that if I was to deal with a young couple, obviously, there are less things involved, in the equation. There are probably less. There's no kids, or they don't own the house, or whatever it is. So it's a lot simpler to deal with.
Okay.
And once you start having children, all those things start becoming more complicated. The problem is, on average, it takes 18 months to prepare for a wedding. People take 18 months to prepare for a wedding.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, a year and a half.
Man, that's a long time.
And they just prepare everything, and obviously in that preparation, they ask those questions. Who do you want to be in? Who do you want to attend the wedding, and why? Oh, no, I don't like this person because of this. Okay, but why don't you do that with your partner? Why don't you ask those questions? Do I want to be with that person, and why? I love him. Okay. Love is not enough.
Well, look, good point, but look how many people are throwing their lives away because, of love, I love the guy, or she loves the bloke, he loves the girl, and so you're willing to destroy everything in your life for the sake of this feeling. And, you know, if you ask a lot of people, what does love mean to you exactly? It's probably not something they've got an immediate response for. The fact that you're prepared to throw your life away for something you can't easily explain even what it is an interesting thing.
But you know, the thing is, actually, that question of what is love was one of the most Googled sentences.
Really?
Yes.
SubhanAllah.
You know? So people actually tend to Google that.
Interesting.
You know? What is love? Why? Because we're not trained.
It's subjective, right? I mean, what it is to you, or what I think it should be to you, as, you know, as your partner,
Definitely.
will be very different to what it is for you, what it is to me. There's a book called The Love Languages. What is it? Love Science?
Yes.
Talks about the 7 different love
5
languages.
love languages, yeah.
The 5 languages. And you realise how differently people feel. So, I mean, you could, I've seen people go through 10, 15, 20 years of marriage without ever understanding that what makes them feel loved doesn't make the other person feel loved. And they just, well, I'm going to work and providing for you every day. I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I get home at 6 o'clock at night. Yeah. If you don't know I freaking love you, well, then you must be crazy, because why else would I be doing this? But to that person, they may appreciate it, but that's not what they need to actually feel loved.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to them. You know, the thing is, again, when you look at it, they don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
So usually, you know, unfulfilled needs, you know, leads to arguments and conflict. Why? Because I feel like, you know, my cup is not being filled. Therefore, you know, I'm frustrated and angry. You know, so you've got to fill my cup too. But how would I fill your cup if I don't know what you want in your cup?
Well said.
Yeah, and that's the problem. The problem is the fact that, you know, people expect and assume that you should know. We've been married for 10 years. You should know. I don't. Yeah.
We can shouldn't all the way to the courthouse.
But you know, that's another thing too. You know, that's wrong with us. And I don't say that everything is wrong, but certain things are wrong too. You know, we just leave it to the last minute, and usually it ends up in court.
Well, it's a hard thing to do, I think, sometimes to come to terms with being sorry, or to come to terms with or admit the fact that you've maybe been doing something wrong, especially for a really long time. It's like, oh, you don't want to sort of own that and sit in that feeling of guilt and, oh man, I've been neglecting you for the last 10 years, and you know, that's a heavy thing. So instead of dealing with it, it's just no, it's wrong, and I'm not having that conversation.
But sometimes we satisfy ourselves with what's not satisfying. And then we just, the thing is, yes, oh, he's going to change, she's going to change, he's going to change, she's going to change. How
do you communicate effectively to someone that, because I think there's a fine line between, you know, giving advice or expressing the want for something, you know, to change without it just being seen as just constant criticism. Like, does this person love anything about me? Like, why are you even with me when you're constantly asking me to change? And how do you communicate to someone that, like, there's something that you'd like to change? It's not that you're a bad person or anything like that. It's just I think... and to add to that too, I think it's when people come together, as you said, you go into it and everyone's happy with everything, and it's like, oh, well, you love me for who I was yesterday, but, you know, now here we are a year later and you want these things to change. What was the deal back then? And it's like, well, look, I mean, as we change, we get older, our values, our wants and everything, like I reprioritize my life and what's important to me just as a person, but religiously as well, things may become more of a priority to me in my life now than they were a year ago or 2 or 3 years ago, and I want us to make that change together. But that doesn't mean I think that you're a bad person. It's just I really want to walk this road together. But
the problem is the fact that, as you said, you know, that I'll say togetherness is not as common as we think it is. Okay. You know, so usually I decide to change and I change.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, but you know, you should let me know that you're about to change or you're changing, you know, so that I can actually adjust and think about it, and probably I can actually follow the same path and probably we can make the change together. No, I decided. But when did you decide? When did you make a decision? Why didn't you involve me in that decision? And that's the problem we have. You know, it's the I or you or I, and then, you know, it starts with I and then the you, and then finish in blames. You did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I do this for you, and you do this, and you don't do this. And before you know it, it's a mess. It's a mess. So the problem is we have to go back to the we. We've got to invest in the we. You know, if you think or if you're thinking about changing, if you're thinking that, that something that's happening in your life and there's something that, you need to talk about it. The problem is the fact that sometimes we're scared. It's as I was saying before, we don't trust the reaction of the other person. Therefore, we hide.
Yeah.
We hide until it's too late. Until now, I've got to take action. So I'm taking action. Then the other person looks at me and says, you're selfish. You're a narcissist. You're this and you're that.
Narcissist. I've been called that before in my time.
Yeah. That's the common one.
That's the smile you have too.
That's a common one. Yeah.
I think it gets aimed at men a lot.
Yeah, and also women. But the problem is the fact that, again, we use terms that are actually bigger than our heads. Why? Because
I had to Google it when I got called it, to be honest, because I was like upset, but then I thought, maybe there's something to it. You know what I mean?
It sounds good. It sounds fantastic, but but the problem is we've got no idea of what it means, and that's the problem. The problem is the fact that we use vocabulary, we use language that actually we don't understand.
You're gaslighting me.
That's it. That's a big one.
Sorry, where did gaslighting come from all of a sudden? I started hearing the word maybe last year. I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
Wasn't interested. Then it started getting thrown around in my own life a bit. And I'm like, what is this a new thing, or has it always been a term and it's just become more popular now amongst the woke or something, or what's going on?
But the problem is the fact that we're selective.
Yes.
We hear things and we just select words and, that sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty smart. I think, and then we Google it. That's the first thing we do. We just Google everything. So we Google it. That's like my husband.
I'm feeling triggered. You're gaslighting me. Yeah. You're a narcissist.
That's it. That's like my wife. And then suddenly, we start putting things together and we got a picture there just, and this is what she does because she's a narcissist. And this is what he does because, he's selfish and he only cares about himself. And, he's a liar. He's a liar. Do you know he's a liar? He's a liar. Why? Because he's actually putting money aside. Did you ask him why he's putting money aside? No, because I know he's going to get upset. But how do you know he's going to get upset? Because I know him. He always gets upset. Yeah, but in that instance, did you ask him why he's putting money aside? No. Okay. So why are you upset in that case? So we assume a lot. And those assumptions lead to conflict. We've got no understanding. Why? Because we've got no time. Tell me now. Like now. Can't we wait a bit? The kids are around. No, tell me why. I want the kids to know that you're a liar. Why do you want the kids to know that I'm a liar? Why do you want to do this to me? And, and that's when the cycle of abuse starts. So sometimes the victim is also the abuser. And that's why we have to be careful also of not, just labeling the person and say, you're an abuser or you're just, and we use all those terms. We've got to just go back to the roots and we've got to take the time to analyze what's going on. Because it's easy to judge on an outcome or to judge on an outburst. You see, he's angry. I told you he's angry. But why is he angry? Yeah, he's frustrated. But why is he frustrated? Because his needs are not being met. Have you checked your values? Have you checked his values? Do you know his values? Do you know what he values in life? I don't know. We don't discuss this. Yeah, but...
Because it's weird if you've lived for a very long time, or any period of reasonable amount of time, without having those conversations, having that conversation is not those sorts of conversations are a very uncomfortable thing to do. Like, you're in your routine day to day. We do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We talk about the same things. It's the same stuff, the same cycle. And now all of a sudden I've got to sit down and try and look you in the eye and go, what do you value in your life? I don't know. Why? But
you see, that's the problem. The problem is the fact that from the get-go, there are issues that we have to discuss from the get-go.
From the start, yeah.
And those issues are very simple. Number one is, finance. Let's discuss finance. And how is that going to look? Are we going to have a joint account? Are we going to have separate accounts? Are we going to have a family account? Are we going to have a saving account? What does that look like? It's a massive topic. It's one of the main source of problems and
Financial
conflict.
stuff, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's massive.
Wow.
You know why? Because I feel betrayed. Because you're not sharing with me, because you're hiding, or because you're doing this, or because you're doing that. You know, and then it leads to a lot of, mistrust. I can't trust you with money because you spend too much money. Okay, let's discuss it. Let's work together. There is no also that just, we've got to sit down together before we start a relationship, before things get too serious. So how do we deal with finances? How do we do it with how do we do with kids? How we do with religion? Religion is an important thing as well. You know, what are your goals? You know, what do you want to do? Ultimately, because if I'm there 10 years later, when we got married, the wife says, "No, actually, I just want to stay home and look after the kids." Is that what you want to do? Are you sure? Is there anything else you want to do? No, this is what I want to do. Okay, great, fantastic. Let's work on this. And then suddenly she changes without alerting the husband, or he changes without alerting her. It becomes a massive issue. Why? Because you're betraying me. This is not what I signed for. Same thing with intimacy. Intimacy is a big thing. It's a big taboo in our community. We don't talk about it.
Sure.
We don't talk about it. Why? Because, I feel a bit uncomfortable talking about it. It's not comfortable. Yeah, but what do you want to do? I mean, ultimately, this is going to happen. Once you've signed, once you get married, it may happen. But what if the person is asexual? Which means that
they're just not interested.
What do? You've got needs. They're not being met. But we didn't discuss it because I was too shy, you see.
I almost want to ask you, what does that person do? But I kind of don't either. I'm not sure. I've got an idea.
But you see, it's a real issue. It's a real issue. And that's the problem. It's actually a sad thing because we didn't take the time to discuss those things.
When are most people coming to you for relationship therapy? Is it when things are is it last resort usually?
Yeah.
Like everything else hasn't worked, we're about to get divorced, but my friends have convinced me we should talk to someone. Yeah. It's the wrong time. I'm not saying it's not a good time any time's a good time to put your hand up and say it out, but man, that's not ideal. Like people should be there should be some sort of, I think, Alo Alem, and you're a psychologist, your opinion's more sound than mine on this, but people who are looking at getting married shouldn't just be doing individual courses, but they should be coming and sitting down with someone like you before they even tie the knot to work things out. And then for you go to the doctor regularly for checkups, right? Even if there's nothing wrong with you might go once a year for bloods. Do you think it would be a good idea for couples to come in and do the same thing? Just get a checkup, come in, sit down, especially if things are great. Come and sit down and talk about why things are working well for you, and maybe that's something that can get passed on to others.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I wish things could be that easy. When you look at it, actually, it's funny because if you look at the Christian church and how they actually,
they are good with stuff like that.
Yeah, they're really good. What they did is early on in the piece, they actually decided to get their priests, to educate them, into counseling and couple counseling. Why? Because they realized actually the priests were, somehow losing touch with what was happening in the society, in their community, in their congregation. So what did they do? They actually trained them into counseling and couple counseling. And now actually what you've got in the Catholic Church and other churches, you've got marital counseling.
Nice.
And then, it's actually kind of compulsory because otherwise they don't sign off, so you've got to come and discuss, your goals and your fears and your expectations with someone that's trained in the field. It doesn't guarantee that the marriage is going to work.
Of course not. Yeah.
But what it does, it gives you some kind of background. Okay, so I know what to expect now. Our girls, our boys don't know what to expect. I mean, as you said before, the culture doesn't allow them to have long-term relationship. Therefore, it's just, within 6 months, within 2 months, within 3 months, within 3 days, we're going to get married. Oh, wow, we're going to get married. Do you know what that means? We're just going to get married.
We just want to get to the wedding night and everything else will work itself out.
That's it. Okay, so how are you going to pay, for the rent, food, you know, and all that stuff, because you're taking that girl out of her house. How are you going to deal with it? I don't know. I just work it out.
I'll find work.
Yeah. I just work it out. And that becomes an issue, you know, again. Why? Because of the lack of preparation. So that, you know, a person used to say, you know, no one plans to fail, but we all fail to plan.
Yes.
And that's a big thing. Why? Because the problem is we just come in and we get thrown into the deep sea and into the deep water, and then you've got to learn to swim. Yeah, but, you know, come on, it's a bit painful. I mean, pain is necessary, but suffering is optional.
Well said. Yeah. You know, a word that's come up, you know, in conversation between you and I before is talking about expectations. I'm someone who puts a lot of expectations on the people around me, and that's in all relationships, friendships, everything. I haven't really figured out the how and why of it all, but I realise I do it. You know I do it. And I'm realising that the more I'm able to set them aside, the happier I am. Yeah. I also can see it's pretty unfair to put your expectations onto other people. Some things I think we need to be clear on. You know, there's some non-negotiables, you know, like, you know, with whatever they are for different people. But then there's a lot of stuff that's just the other person needs to be free to be a person and live their life and develop and everything else and make mistakes and do things well and grow, and not stuck in your framework of who and what you think they should be. Do you find that's a big problem in marriages, where it's just like, this is what a husband should do, or this is what a good wife should be? Like, why do I have to explain this? And
yeah. But, you know, the problem is the fact that, you know, when we look at it, we base ourselves on, you know, just our own experience, because that's the only thing we know.
Yeah.
You know, on our friends' experience or family's experience, and therefore, you know, when we look at it, we don't base ourselves on reality, and what is realistic.
Yeah.
I mean, realistic expectations are great. Why? Because, okay, I expect this from you, and I know that you can do it, and you know you can do it, and we're all working together in order to achieve this. Fantastic. That's great. That works out. But if you expect me to do something that I have got no idea about, how am I going to do this? You know? Or if I don't know what you expect, because you expect it, but you don't communicate it.
And if I'm comparing our relationship to the relationship my mother and father had, how is that fair? Like, I mean, okay, yeah, they had a good relationship, for example, but they're two completely different people to us.
Oh, yeah.
They grew up in their own little worlds, in their own lives, with their own families, with their own influences. So those two human beings going through whatever they did in life to bring them together allowed them to have the exact relationship that they did. That can't just be replicated because I saw that and think it looks good.
Yeah. But you see, that's the problem. The problem is the fact that, you know, we all have, you know, some kind of opinions. Opinions are free.
Yeah.
We all, you know, so we use those opinions against people, especially against the people we love. You know, in my opinion, you should be doing this. In my opinion, you should be doing that. Yeah, but it's your opinion. It's not reality. So the problem is the fact that, I mean, I grew up in a house where my mom was just a clean freak. She would clean the house probably 3 times a day.
Nice.
You know, and just like, oh man, that was just like full on. And when I say cleaning, it's just like cleaning. You know, it's just like water everywhere. We go and you know, just like you got to watch your steps. You know, it's like a hazard. You know, you know. And when she's cleaning, you stay out because there's nowhere to go. So you'll have to lift your legs, you lift your feet, and just like, you know, yeah. So it's full on. You know, and yeah. So I grew up in that. You know, just everything is ordered and everything, because it's a small house, so everything has to be ordered. Otherwise, it looks messy. And my mom looked after her house, you know. It's just, so everything is in its place, and it's all clean and it's all things. So if you touch something, what did you do? You know, so, oh, okay, sorry, just put it back there. Just, and then you move on to, you know, to a married life, and then you know, you've got those memories of your mom just cleaning everything, and your mom and your wife your wife values other things than cleaning, and then just you waiting there, just like, oh yeah. How many times did you clean the house today? Oh, just cleaned it. Just cleaned this morning. Okay. Okay. So, did you see there's a bit of dust there? Oh yeah. Oh, Yeah, that's fine. I'll clean a bit later. Actually, it has to be clean now. So you become a bit obsessive.
Yeah.
Why? Because you've got those expectations. And as you said, the only way for you to just be happier is to set them aside. Leave them aside. Deal with them, first of all, and then put them aside, put them to rest. You've got to understand that everyone is different. And everyone values different things. My wife is the best mother you can find. She's the best cook you can find.
Mashallah.
It's just amazing. She's very supportive. And without her, I don't think I will be able to do half of what I do today.
She'll be very happy after she
watches this. I have to say that, and that's what she does. She does it really well. So my expectations are not outside of that. Why? Because otherwise, as you said, it will be unfair.
You're just grateful for what you've got and recognise the good things that are going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I go for her strength. She's an amazing mom, amazing wife. She looks after all of us, and she does it without complaining. So who am I to just put more and more and more and more on top of it?
Do you think? I've in my life I've experienced, and I've seen other people with sort of like these codependency issues where you expect the other person to fulfill every role in everything in your life, and it seems to me to be a pretty unhealthy thing. And you've got to realise that it's just like you have got different friends. You know what I mean? I've got a mate that I call when I need to laugh. I've got a mate that I call when I might need to have a cry. I've got mates I call when I'm angry. Different people have different strengths and things. And so if your partner is really amazing at taking care of you, of, whatever, making you feel loved or certain things, but it's kind of hard to talk to or doesn't really understand, the way you work when it comes to you expressing, hurt or stress or anxiety and that. I think I tend to see people get kind of hung up on, I can't talk to her, about these things. Man, well, okay, but you've got your mate Jeff, and you can talk to him. So alhamdulillah for that. Yeah. Like all people can't, one person can't be all things to everyone.
They can't fulfill everything.
As you said, seeing the good, accepting the good, being grateful for the good in that person, and just that's it. Thank you. I don't have to focus on what you don't or aren't able to do for me because of you're a human being, and you kind of hope that the other person does the same for you.
But you see, that's the problem. The problem is the fact that we always focus on what is wrong, and that's the problem with. Yeah. We think that it's a female thing. It's actually also a male thing. Why? Because the first thing we do when we get home. And we see that, the wife doesn't seem to be too happy. The first thing we do and the first thing we say is, what's wrong with you? And after that, we're surprised that actually we get, we get a mouthful. I've been doing this, I've been doing this, I've been doing this, I've been doing this, I've been doing this. The problem is the fact that we always focus on the wrong. So even when we ask our wives, instead of looking at the positive, we're always looking at the negative. So instead of saying, what's wrong with you? Okay, do you want me to make you a cup of tea? Do you want me to make you a cup of coffee? Anything I can do for you? No, I'm just tired. I had a long day. Okay, how about just take 10 minutes? Just chill, and I look after the kids, and I do this for you, and I do that for you. That's love. Why? Because you are, noticing that something is happening there, and instead of saying, what's wrong with you? You're always upset. Do something about it. If you see that she's upset, do something about it. Don't blame her for being upset. So that's the problem we have. We focus on negative. We don't focus on positive. We don't focus on what we can do. We always focus on what's wrong. This is not working. This is not happening. She's not doing this. She's not doing that. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. What does he do? Well, try to acknowledge it first. And then you can build upon it.
Because isn't it crazy, like when there's an argument between people, the long list of things all of a sudden, it's like that everything that the other person's doing wrong. You're this, you're that, you're selfish, you don't listen, you blah, 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 blah. You're like, whoa. Yeah. And I think, look, I can only talk from a man's point of view because, I'm a man. But I hear a lot of men, like, we don't get it. Like, hang on a second, woman. 2 days ago, you were telling me I'm the love of your life, and you were so happy and smiling and we were laughing. Did you forget that happened? Because according to you today, for the last 6 months or ever since the day you met me, I've been a prick and a scumbag, and I don't consider your needs and everything like that. So where was that reality last week and the week before and the week before that when you were happy? And we can't make sense of it. Yeah. Someone said to me, and I think this seems to be true, and, if you can clarify for all of us, inshallah, but, when women say things, when they're emotional, they're not saying that it's not necessarily factually driven or factually correct. It's just their emotions. Yes. You're this, you're always that. It's like, hang on. But we're sort of more facts-based. Like, okay, you're telling me I've always done this. Yeah. Give me more than one example of me doing it today. Give me one other example of me doing it in the last 12 months, and I'll agree that I always do it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're a prick. And it turns into that. We want facts. Yeah. Yeah, they're just going on feelings, right?
But the problem is the fact that, when we look at it, it's always based on unresolved problems or unfinished business.
Okay, yeah.
Why? Because you did something there and I bottled up and I kept it. I didn't say it. Why? Because I didn't want, to create an argument.
Right, when we all do that, yeah.
Yeah, so, and then you said something else or you did something else and I didn't say anything about it. I just kept it because I wanted to be, playing the happy wife and the happy husband and just like, just let it flow. It's okay. It's all good. And then you did something else and you did something else and you did something else. And before you know, you're the worst person on earth.
That makes sense. But that, like, as the person because not all things are worth airing, right? I mean, for myself anyway, there's a lot of things that, I could say something about, I'm pissed off, but I know it's nothing, it's more me. If I don't say anything, it'll go away. There's stuff worth doing that with. But if I'm going to be someone that does that and put it aside, I've got to make the decision in doing that. I'm not going to bring it up next week either. If I'm letting this go, I'm letting it go. It's gone forever.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I haven't really let it go, have I?
But you're assuming that. Is it? And that's the thing. You're assuming that I let it go, and it's not because I said I let it go that I let it go.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. I let it go until the next conflict, until the next fight.
So it feels like we sort of talk too much or we talk too little.
Yeah. Yeah. But you see, that's the problem. As you said, it's talk and talk and talk. Where are the actions?
Okay.
And I think usually females reproach.
Nice, that's great. Where are the actions? You're hearing this, people? This is gold. This is what we should be writing down. Really.
Yeah, but see, that's the problem. I mean, if you were to ask me what's one of the biggest cause of argument, and how do the females I see explain it? He talks, but he doesn't do anything. He says he's going to do this. He says he's going to take me there. He says that our life is going to change. He says this. He says that. He says a lot. The problem is we say a lot of things, but we don't realize that, again, people are listening to what we say. And we've got to be very careful. Why? Because, as soon as you say something, you've got to stick with what you said. The problem is the fact that we say a lot of things, and it reminds me of something that Sayyidina Ali Ratan used to say. He used to say something beautiful. He used to say, do not make promises when you're happy, and do not make decisions when you are angry.
Yep.
And that's exactly what we do. We make promises when we're happy, so we're having a good time and we're watching a movie together, and just, you know what, on the weekend I take you there, and we'll do that, and we'll do that, and we'll do that, and we'll do that. Comes the weekend, I'm sorry, my friend called me, he needs me and I need to go. She's waiting. And how do you compensate for it? Oh, when I come back, we'll do this. And you come back, you're too tired. You go straight to bed. Or you come back late. She's been waiting for you. But again, you're too busy. Or you assume that she'll be fine, she'll be okay with it. Because I had to help. I went for the good cause, and that's where we make mistakes. Why? Because we assume that it's okay to say certain things and not to follow through.
How do you get someone? Okay, let's just say you've got a wife who realizes, counselling would be of benefit. Husband's old school, stubborn, from whatever culture that doesn't really support going and doing these sorts of things. So you got one hand trying to clap, really desperately wanting to fix things. The other person, the idea of counselling is just like, nah. How does that person, what are some tips for that person to approach the other one to try and get them to come and get some help?
I mean, women are really good at it. Somehow they manage to convince the husband to come in and to talk about it.
Yeah.
The problem is the first step, taking that first step. Once the man takes that first step, then trust me, actually, in my counseling sessions, men talk more than women.
Do they?
Oh, yeah.
I bet.
Oh, yeah. As soon as they start.
They get the chance. I got the microphone. It's my turn.
That's it, you know, and then they're gone. And then but they just need that encouragement. Or, you know, sometimes, I mean, we've got to understand that it also lays with the way we educate and with the way we brought up as men. Men don't cry. Men don't complain. Men don't talk about their problems. I mean, they just did a survey in the UK, and they found that actually 50% of men in the UK actually have no one to talk to.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's sad.
So no friend, no family.
Wallah, that's sad.
They can't even talk to their partners. Yeah. So 50%. You know,
that's hard.
It's a big number.
That sucks.
And leads to obviously loneliness, isolation, and obviously suicide on the track. You know, and that's why, you know, 3/4 of the society actually involve men. You know, because men don't talk, men don't cry, men don't share.
You know, sometimes I've heard women say things like, you know, he's so good he's there for all his friends, you can listen to them day and night, but when it comes to me, I've thought about those statements and stuff, and it's like, I think there's a lot of truth in that for a lot of people, but why? And it's like, well, I mean, I know I can listen to my friends' problems all day long because they're not talking about things that I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
I don't have to sit there and confront the fact that I'm maybe a bit of a crappy person in certain areas of my life. That's why I can listen to them, because they're talking about their problems. That's fine. It doesn't involve me. Now it involves me and it's personal. It sucks. It's hard to hear that, you know, you're hurting someone or that you whatever. It's hard to listen to.
But it is hard.
And that's perceived as just a lack of, you know, well, you don't really care about me. You care about them more than you care about me. It's not that. I just have a hard time listening to things that I'm doing wrong. Yeah. You know.
But you see, that's the problem as well. And again, we go back to, you know, to what we do wrong and what's wrong with you and what, you know. So we don't invest in strength, in good. We're always working on, you see, this is what you do wrong and this is what you do wrong. Why? Because we don't see the good. You know, we only see the bad. If I was, you know, to ask you to look at, you know, the wall and just say, okay, do you see anything? And you would say, no, I just see a white wall there. Okay, fantastic. And now if I was to just put a tiny bit of a mark there on the wall, and I was to ask you, oh, can you look at the wall? What do you see? You won't see the white wall in your wall. You only see that mark there on the wall. Why? Because now it's not perfect anymore. And that's the problem. The problem is we want people to be perfect according to the idea we've got of them. I want them to be this way. I want them to be this way. And sometimes we compare with our friends, you know, with our family. Just, but you see, my sister's husband, he's in touch with his feelings and he shares and he does this and he spends time with his... And you've got to listen.
Congratulations to your sister.
But you see, that's the thing too. So we don't understand that. Again, we always compare. You know, things that actually are not comparable, and that's why men actually tend to switch off, because you're comparing me with my brother, you're comparing me with my friend, you're comparing me with someone else, you're telling me what I'm doing wrong. I want to hear that I do something right. I want to hear that I'm valued.
Tell me why you're here. What are the things you value about me? Yeah. You know, I think we tend to compare down, like, for ourselves. And I'll give you an example. There's a movie, it's called 4 Seasons with Vince Vaughn, where he goes and does Christmas with like 4 different families, his in-laws and his own family. And there's a scene where he's talking to his father, and the father's speaking about his mum. And he says, I never hit your mother and I never lied to her face. I spoiled her is what I did. You know, that's how we tend to see ourselves, like, oh man, what's she complaining about? I don't hit her. I come home. I pay the rent. Like, what do you got to complain about? You know, it's like, okay, bro, you know, we got to compare up, aim a little bit higher than, well, I don't punch her in the face, you know, like.
But see, that's the problem. The problem is the fact that, number one, you know, we don't trust them, so we don't open up. Number 2, we're so inconsistent with everything we do. You know what, we're going to do a date night now. You know, every Thursday we go out and we do a date night.
You go out once.
that's it. And that's game over. Actually, why? Because on that night you went together, you felt so awkward because you had nothing to talk about. So you looked at each other in the eyes and just like, oh, the food is good. No, not so good. Okay, great, fantastic. Let's go home. Why? Because we are somehow losing touch.
Yeah.
So belonging is important, but you won't get belonging unless you're consistent, unless you feel valued. And that's the problem also with women. They need to feel valued. Men need to feel valued too. We feel that, sometimes it's just a gender thing. It's not. We both need to feel valued.
Yeah.
So how do we do this? By being consistent, by building trust. We've got to build trust. We've got to build consistency. We've got to value each other. We've got to feel that we belong. And we won't belong unless we share. We share things. We share goals. Goals are important. Why? Because if you don't have common goals, and if your goals are only individual, you're going to struggle in your couple.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to struggle. Why? Because you would take two different paths. And then you complain that we've got nothing in common. Yes, but you haven't invested in each other. I see a lot of couples, trust me, for 20 years, their common goal is to raise the kids. That's it. We just raise the kids. We give them the best. Okay, great. So now the kids are grown up.
Now what?
They leave the house. What do we do? We've got nothing in common. We grew out of touch because our main focus was the kids. But we thought that it's an Islamic concept. We have to do that Islamically. We have to raise our kids. Yeah, great. You have to raise your kids. But what about your partner? You didn't invest in each other.
Mm.
What are your goals? What are your common goals? Where are you going? The problem is we don't know. We go with the flow. So when the flow is quiet, it's great. When it's not quiet.
Look out. Here's a question for you. It's a bit of a difficult question. At what point do you look at a couple and go, listen, you still got to call it quits, like enough is enough? Like, when is it just, I'm guessing violence is sort of probably one of those big red flags where it's like, okay, it's time to move away. But how do you as a counsellor sit there and go, listen, you just leave in separate cars and never speak to each other again?
Yeah, that's a big one. Actually, that's a pretty tough question.
Do you come to that point often?
I try not to.
I'm sure. Well, it's, yeah.
Yeah, I try not to. Why? Because I always try to give people a second chance. Okay, probably didn't work with me. Probably didn't match. Probably you need to see someone else.
Okay.
Go see someone else.
Okay.
Go talk to someone else. And then if you get the same result there, then you know that again, you've got to do something about it. The problem is the fact that when we look at it, being responsible for a separation is always a big thing, a big responsibility, to hold. And I put my values, I put also not just professionally, I like to be very ethical.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to be very careful in not failing them and not putting a judgment there, because it's a judgment. You're judging, that relationship has no future. Therefore, you're just calling it. You're calling it for them. Who are you to call it for them?
Mm-hmm. It'd be hard because there would probably be some people who go there wanting to put that on someone else's shoulders. Like, I don't want to be the reason that, I don't want that we separate and my kids have to live in separate houses. I don't want that on me. He doesn't want it on him. But, you'd know that.
Yeah. So, I see it often. I see it really often, where people come in as the last resort. There's nothing left. They're just coming in to hear someone telling them, you should divorce. And I find that really, really low. Why? Because if you want to divorce, you should just look at the other person in your eyes and have the courage to say, I'm done. Rather than just like, we're going to an imam, or we're going to someone else, we're going to your parents, we're going to there, you're going to there, you're going to there. If you go to them for advice and guidance, please do so. But do it before it's too late. Don't do it because you want to hear them saying, you better divorce. Because that's not fair. That's not fair towards the other person. It's also not fair towards the third party.
Because some people are too weak, and I know, I know from my own past as well. It's you don't want to hurt the person. You're too weak to sit there and just say how it is and thing. And if you can put that in someone else's hands, oh great, well, like you said, the imam said this is over. So I mean, look, he knows what it is. It's like, oh, yeah, let's all just stand up. Let's
Yeah. And that's the problem.
It's me. It's what I want or what I don't want.
It always goes back to communication. We've got to communicate on how to communicate.
Respect is important, right?
Oh, man.
I mean, you can disagree. I mean, me and you can be enemies. Yeah. We can still do that in a respectful way. And people don't do that. And, it becomes... And I don't think it's an unrealistic thing to set absolute stone boundaries around how you fight and things.
Yeah.
No matter what we're disagreeing, no matter how, even if our voices are getting raised, we don't swear at each other. We don't call each other names. We don't do this in front of the kids. Non-negotiables. Does not happen ever. Yeah. These things, name calling. It's just, I can let you know that you have absolutely pissed me off and I am ready to just crack myself in the head. I'm so angry, but I can do that in non-violent language. Yeah. We can do that in a respectful way.
But you see, that's also a bit of a concern too. Why? Because rules and roles are to be discussed before we get into a relationship.
Yeah.
Or when we're getting into a relationship. That's what should be discussed. Why? Because I need to know what you expect from me.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you want me to do? But I also need to know, and I need to be guaranteed, not guaranteed, but I need to be assured that you're not going to call me names. You're not going to, and that for that you need rules and strong rules. And how do you enforce the rules is also important.
How do people enforce rules?
I mean, the thing is, again, once you're married, it's harder to enforce rules. Why? Because obviously we tend to brush it off. Okay, that's fine.
If you call me this one more time, I'm going to such and such. She goes, yeah, and calls you. What do you do? Nothing.
Yeah, but you see, that's the problem. The problem is the fact that there is one thing that we should never do unless you can take action, okay? There's something we should never do in a couple. We should never threaten. We should never say, if you do this, I'm going to leave you. If you don't pay this, I'm going to leave you. If you do, don't. Nice. Why? Because if you do that and if you don't leave, game over.
Yeah.
Why? Because, okay, I started with this. She didn't do anything about it. I'm going to move on to this. She may not do anything about it. I'll move on to that. And before you know, you escalate. Before you know, you up the antes. And before you know, respect is lost. So there are things that we should live by, values and virtues. The Islamic virtues that we're losing, such as, just virtues. Virtues and values are different, you see. Virtues and values are completely different. So values that can be shared. Virtues are more powerful, and that's why I'm saying that it's just more core, So things like respect, things like love, things that, those things as well that, Islam teaches us. Empathy, all those things. Those things are not simple values. They're virtues. If you can show love and empathy, then, definitely you're virtuous. You've got to understand that. So there are values and virtues that have to be applied in a relationship, but also in our daily lives, And for me, three virtues and values that are really important to me: honor, respect, love. Live by honor. Respect everyone and love everyone.
MashaAllah.
If you can do that, that's great. But that's what I try to work on for myself. That's what I try to apply for myself. I try to respect everyone. I try to love everyone. And I try to live, with honor. That's what I believe in. That's core to me. And that's why I'm saying that we've got to know our values. We've got to know what we value. We've got to know what leads us in life. If we don't know this, we're going to struggle. So from the get-go, you need to know the rules, because you don't enter a game without knowing the rules. Yes? If you enter a game and the person keeps changing the rules, how are you going to feel?
Mm.
You're going to feel frustrated.
Mm.
You're going to feel like, this is cheating. You're cheating me because you keep changing the rules. Therefore, you keep just putting my world upside down. I want certainty. We as human beings need certainty. It's actually a mix of certainty and uncertainty.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So we want to feel safe and secure. Why? Because it's one of the basic needs we've got. Safety, security is one of the basic needs we've got. And that's valid to our kids too. Our kids need to feel safe. So a lot of parents tell me, how do I raise healthy kids? Safety. They need to feel safe. And they need to feel valued. That's what they need. They need to feel safe and need to feel valued.
Mm.
You know? So they need a sense of stability. So as human beings, we've got that need for certainty. So we need to know. That's why we're always anxious about tomorrow, because we don't know. That's why we all freak out. What's going to happen to me? Because I need to know. I need to know. Certainty. But then if someone wants to tell you exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, the next day, how would you feel?
Not very interested, yeah.
Yeah. Then we also need that uncertainty as well. Why? Because too much certainty kills us. Same thing with comfort. So in a relationship, we shouldn't get too comfortable. We should constantly think about ways to improve ourselves and to improve the status quo.
Nice.
You know, so it's a constant work. We work, you know. So that's why a lot of people tell me, yeah, it's just, oh yeah. But what do? You know, when I get home, I'm tired. I mean, I've worked all day, you know, and then I come home to a mess. The kids are screaming, you know, just the wife isn't happy. And so listen, consider work as work and consider home as your second shift. When you get home, there's no, I'm tired. Because that's what our parents used to say. You know, I get home, my dad, I remember, finish work, boom, gets into his room, just relax, eats, goes to sleep. My mom, all day long on her feet. She wakes up in the morning before Fajr, she cooks, you know, she makes, you know, lunch for my dad, you know, she gives him lunch, she says goodbye to him, boom, and then she starts with the kids. The kids all day, cooking, come at 12 o'clock, because in France we've got a break between 12 and 2, so come at home, boom, warm meal on the table. Wow, this is cool. You know, just, and she continues, her shift continues. Then dad comes back, she's got to be there for him. Boom, 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 he goes to sleep. So we've got to understand that, you know, we've got to be there for one another, you know, and we've got to also invest in one another. We've got to show empathy and put ourselves in the other person's shoes.
Yeah, that's good advice. Jazakallah khair.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it's a difficult thing to see. So please, I think the most important thing that if anyone was to listen, I'll say that it is important, you know, to set the rules and the roles from the beginning, so you don't get surprises. Allah
barik fiik. What I'm going to do, brother, with your permission, inshallah, is put up the contact details on the screen somewhere. I don't know where they'll put them, but I want to put the contact details for Karabi Wellness, and encourage people at home that there's no shame in putting your hand up and saying, I need help. I've got counselling many times over the course of my life with this brother personally as well, and it's something I plan on doing as an ongoing strategy to helping me deal with the slings and arrows of life and dealing with hardships and stuff and anxieties and different things and relationships and whatever else. It really, there's no shame in doing it. You know, how can we don't know things until we learn, right? We can't possibly just expect that the strategies and answers to how to deal with a difficult situation at home is just going to pop into our mind. It's not going to happen any more than, you know, the understanding of how to build a house out of bricks is going to just pop into your mind all of a sudden. You've got to go out and learn and consult people who know how to do these things, and that's what these therapists and counsellors and psychologists are. They help us understand the intricacies of life and how to deal with people and do things better. So I encourage everyone at home to reach out or reach out to people that you know who are struggling, because look, if we're not happy at home, I mean, the suffering that people carry inside themselves, you know, life doesn't have to, be as hard as it is sometimes. Sometimes there's so many things that we can do to ease the suffering. And if we're suffering less inside, we can give more of ourselves to our kids, to our families, our parents, to each other, to ourselves, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, So again, just please reach out and help. Details are on the screen. Jazakallah khair. Brother, I hope to have you in here very soon again. I want to keep talking about mental health and different things and reaching out to people who aren't so comfortable in reaching out themselves.
That'll be inshallah. No, inshallah khair. Thank you so much thank you for inviting me, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak about that, because it has to be spoken about. We are reaching, alarming levels, when it comes to mental health in our community. And I think it is important for us to understand that it's not the role of the wife or the husband or the parents or the kid. It's actually the role of the community to look after each other.
Nice.
I think it is important for us to just build a sense of community, where we all come together, to help one another. Please, it is important, because I see people are becoming more isolated and more lonely, and more depressed. And before we know, we're losing all our, our support and support networks. I think it is important for us to just build and rebuild stronger and stronger, support networks. We need the community to come together. We need strong institutions. We need places where people, not only the Caribbean Wellness Center, but also other places. We need our imams to just take courses in counseling and family counseling in order to just, better themselves and also support, the people there, and just be able to respond directly to the needs in the community. It is important to understand it's our role as a community to work together to improve that. So, I just call upon anyone that is interested in learning about, just counseling and supporting one another and helping one another, to just reach out to anyone, and just let's work together on building strong institutions. There are needs and arising needs in our community, and we've got to respond to it positively. We shouldn't wait too long, So we've got to be proactive and not reactive.
Awesome. Allah barik fik. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.